So, good afternoon or good morning to everybody. If you're around the world somewhere else, then good day, simply. Today, I'm going to hold my presentation in English just because I feel like it might be a little bit more charming, a little bit more charismatic if I do so in English. Considering this is a forum for teaching and what I assume to be predominantly English as a foreign language, I hope that none of you will experience any difficulties in understanding what I have to say today. Of course, I believe you'll be able to receive a recording, which you could then go over afterwards. So let me go ahead and get started. It looks like everything is set up. My name is Aaron Figurski. You can call me Aaron Detroit Figurski. Why Detroit? Well, I'm from Detroit. And it's a really cool city, and it has a long history and a very interesting dynamic to it. People from Detroit are special. So I'm Aaron Detroit Figurski. If you don't know me already, I'd like to say thank you for joining my speech today, my presentation, and I'll be talking about a number of different things. As you can see behind me, we have none other than the beautiful city of Detroit. If you've never been there, I recommend at least once in your life to check it out. So, who am I? As I said, my name is Aaron Figurski. I'm the manager and founder of Everyday English, LLC. Basically, it is a school for learning English as a foreign language. As of now, we're mostly online. All of our lessons, with the exception of some offline lessons, happen on the online digital sphere, and we are ramping up or accelerating our activities in this sphere. It's a great new potential, a great new field that I've been extremely happy to be a part of, in no small part thanks to none other than the coronavirus pandemic. So what do we offer? We offer full immersion English learning programs. Our main rule or our main idea is to connect students with teachers, which can be native speakers or other speakers, other teachers, who will speak and instruct their lessons fully in English. This has a lot of advantages and a lot of benefits. It also comes with a few additional challenges when it comes to teaching. But nevertheless, I feel that the results and the potential of these kinds of lessons, full immersion, is largely more beneficial in the long run, and it's definitely worth it to go ahead and adopt this approach. So we have a global online school. At the current moment, I have employees, students, people who contribute to our projects, everywhere from Argentina all the way to Australia. Every single day, a number of people are all communicating, working together to achieve the mission of the company, of the school. So I've listed my website here for you to take a look if you'd like to look at some of our programs and some of the things that we do. We'll be expanding our content there quite a lot in the upcoming months. And one very interesting thing is that we'll be launching a podcast here very soon. A podcast where you'll be able to listen to all things related to English and very interesting topics there. So enough about myself. Let's get down to it. Communication. My presentation today is about communication. Communication is one of those things that you always hear. It's the most important thing. Without communication, nothing works. It's said so many times, day in, day out. You read about it in all the special books, marketing books, business books, any sort of literature, nonfiction that is to help you create systems. Boils down to communication is number one. But very often, we don't focus on communication as our priority. Many, many times, especially in the world of teaching, we're focused on our product. How can I make my teaching methods more effective? How can I get more results out of our students? How can I make this better? How can I increase this product? No, the worth of this product and the value we bring to our customers. I'm not going to tell you that this isn't a very important aspect of any school or any business. Of course it is. That's a whole nother section of things that you need to keep an eye on and also work on to make a successful project or to make a successful school. But communication then falls by the wayside, or as it were, becomes not one of the things that we focus too much on. And that has grave implications for the effectiveness and the way that we can run our business going on from there in our schools. How important is communication? Let's think about this for a second. Going way back to Greece in the long time ago, 490 BCE, which is before the Common Era, we have none other than the Great Battle of Marathon. You might have heard of a marathon, this running type race where you need to run a very long distance all in one go. But this battle was a little bit more influential than you might actually even think. Many historians and many people in general consider this battle to be one of the turning points in so-called Western civilization. Why Western civilization? Because the Greeks defeated the Persians. This had never been done before. The Persians were thought to be invincible. And from this battle and from this victory, the Greeks went on to create the foundations of what would later then become Western civilization and civilization in general as we know it. Phidippides, which I may have pronounced his name incorrectly, I apologize if I did so, the Greek messenger runs from Marathon to Athens to announce the victory over the Persians. Now, what does this have to do with communication? Well, when the Greeks won the battle, there needed to be a way to send this message further back to Athens. At that time, there were no cell phones, there was no telegram or instant messengers or WhatsApp. And so they sent a normal runner, a courier, or a messenger, if you will. And what happened? How important was this communication? Phidippides ran the entire distance from Marathon to Athens. And what happened? The answer to our question, how important is communication? Well, let me tell you, it's worth dying for. Because upon arrival to Athens, Phidippides gave his message that the Greeks had defeated the Persians, then collapsed and died. The message that he was carrying was so important that he was ready to die for it, so that the Athenians could get that information just a little bit faster. So that's just a little bit of a perspective on how important communication actually can be. Now, let's get back to our present day. Let's talk about something that I believe is relevant to us all, and that's the private educational organizations. This may be a small project, this may be a school, this may be you as an individual teacher, this may be any scale of organization within the educational sphere. Doesn't matter. One of the main differences is that it's private. When it's private, there are a number of different considerations that need to be taken into account. The main one of those is that the client is king. The people who drive your business more than even your employees, than your teachers, are none other than the students who are consuming or purchasing your services. Now, when it comes to private educational organizations, obviously there are many different types and structures. You could have online schools with very large amounts of video content and courses where you may need to just simply sign up, watch, answer a few questions, and boom, there you go. You've got the product. These I would consider to be a little bit less service oriented as usual, but nevertheless, there are services inherent there. But in the educational sphere, service industries are inherently people intensive. Let's think about that for a second, because people intensive is a critical factor here. If you think about all of the things it takes to put together one lesson, one educational element, one meeting, one discussion, anything with an organizational foundation, the amount of people that go into it is quite large. And when you have so many people, that makes a lot of different considerations which need to be thought about. Let's take a look at this graph that I have here on my presentation. So at our center, we have the lesson or the service that we provide, whatever it may be, consultation, English lessons, whatever, doesn't matter. And all around these things are a number of people who are inherently conjoined or inherently active within facilitating or creating this product. Some of the ones that I've listed here, you might understand well as they're present in your own projects. For example, we have parents, teachers, associates, managers, substitutes, students, methodologists. All of these people come together to create one thing, one lesson, one service. And when we're talking about private educational organizations, that is our day-to-day operations. Those are the things we do every day. That is our main product. This is what we provide. We provide a service. We provide lessons to people. But behind the organizational structures of those lessons, a number of people are working together or working in opposite directions to make everything happen. And this is where communication becomes a vital factor. When we think about it, you need to understand the teacher needs to speak with the school. The parents want to give feedback. The parents want to understand things. The methodologist needs to send information about what needs to be done. The students themselves, how they feel during the lesson or what they feel before the lesson or how they've done their homework. The manager who says that we need to achieve certain results with our services, with our products, and the associate, the poor associate, or in Russian generally termed the administrator, the poor associate who runs around to try to convey all of this different information to everyone. Obviously, when we're dealing with children as our students, the parents play a very large role in it. So if you're working with children, you have an additional person who's going to affect the communication chain. Substitutes. What are substitutes? Substitutes are one of the things that are not inherent in every single day, but they often have a large effect on how our services can be provided. For example, if your teacher is sick, well, you have a substitute teacher. But does the substitute teacher know when the lesson should be, at which time he needs to do this, how to facilitate the lesson? Substitutes may be on part of the student. Normally, the mom or the dad comes and brings the student to the lesson or makes sure that the student is attending the lesson. But then one day, grandma comes. And what does grandma know about what's going on? Nothing. Here's my child. Go ahead. Go to town. From then on, the communication may start to break down. And all of these different processes are not only combined with verbal communication, written communication in messengers, in emails, in telephone calls, I guess we could say messaging services. There are also telephone calls, Slack, all sorts of different project management services that also try to help you understand how the communication is built up. So if we really think about it, you have to understand that your lesson or your service is dependent on the interrelation of a number of different people. And let's take a look further. What factors go into this? Time, location, agent, means, unexpected problems, task, all build up or flow into your completed service. And this creates a chain. As soon as any one of these elements is disrupted or miscommunicated, even worse, what happens? You're unable to provide the service as needed. Time. What time will the lesson be? Will it be the same time every week or will it change? Location. Will the location be in classroom 1, classroom 2, classroom 35? Will the location be on Zoom? Will it be on Skype? What do we do if the location changes? What about the agent? Who is doing it? Is the teacher the regular teacher? Is there a substitute teacher? Who's bringing the students to the class? If you have an offline facility, maybe they don't know how to get to your school. One day, grandma or grandpa or big brother needs to take the child to the school, and they call to find out, how do I get there? There are a million different factors that go into one single culmination of us providing the service that our school has set out to do. And that creates a chain. And of course, what happens with any chain? Yes, one of our age-old proverbs, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. The moment, and this is actually something that really, really needs to sink in when you're creating a project. I mentioned this already once, that many times when we go set out to provide educational services, a lesson of English, for example, our main focus is, how can I make this better? How can I create the best possible product? Very often we're not putting as much time or effort into the communication that's necessary. And what happens? You have such things, a thing happens which is called a communication breakdown. The moment the communication process encounters a breakdown, the inevitable effect will translate into monetary loss. Monetary loss is basically you as a school or as a teacher or as an organizer, whoever it is, losing money. Okay? This may not be as direct as you might think. Many times it's a loss of time. But another one of our age-old proverbs says that time is money. And every time your communication breaks down, you, your school, your project, your organization will lose the funds, the resources that it needs to create the better project, to create better systems. Communication is that important. And now I'd like to invite you just to think for a minute of all the times, and I know this has happened to must be every single one of you, where there was a communication breakdown, where the time or the location or the who, the agent, what I should teach today, the means, any of a number of things was ineffectively communicated, or the message didn't get through. And what happened? A lesson was lost, time was wasted, delays were experienced, and what happens with that? You will lose money. Your school will lose money, and nobody wants to lose money. So the point that I want to drive home here is, you as an organizer, as a manager, and also as a regular employee, because each person has their part to play, should devote a larger, if not a huge amount of time into the creation of communication processes. Because if your communication is strong, then you will minimize the risk of losing money, and you'll minimize the risk of having unsatisfied employees, unsatisfied students, or unsatisfied parents. Let's move on from there. Let me give you an example of a perfect communication breakdown. Let's say that you have a student or a class or a group or whatever it may be. Everybody has their set time, they have their set room, they have their set procedure. More or less everything begins to go okay. Now, one day, the parents or the students decide that, well, I need to ask a very important question. What time is the lesson next week? Or can I change the lesson time because I have to do this, or I have to do that, or whatever it may be. And so who do they go to? Well, they go straight to the teacher, because that's the person who they know. That is the person with whom they have the largest or the deepest relationship in terms of the communication, of course. And what does the teacher do? Well, any good employee wants to help. So of course the teacher starts to say, yes, of course, yes, we can move the time to this thing, or I'm open, or I'm available, or yes, I don't mind, I can help you out with that. Later, then what happens? The teacher forgets. Why does the teacher forget? Is the teacher a bad person? No, the teacher's not a bad person. But the teacher is a teacher. The teacher doesn't have the job of relaying communication elements or logistical elements from one person to the other person. Maybe they do have that job in your organization. The question there is that effective? So the teacher simply forgets to pass it along. And then when the student does eventually get to the administration or the school itself, or there's a problem that happens on day X, what they say is, well, I told the teacher, and he said, or she said, that yeah, it's not a problem at all. Boom. Now here you have a communication breakdown, which has led to at least the client feeling a little bit of dissonance with how things went about. And that, in the worst case scenario, it could have even led to a lost lesson, a missed class, student being absent, or whatever the case may be. So what do a lot of people do to try to alleviate these problems, or how can we set up systems to make this viable? Well, we have all of our different players, our managers, our students, our parents, our teachers, our methodologists, and our subs, our substitutes. And very often at the center of all of this is none other than the poor customer associate or administrator. This person has a gigantic task of relaying, thinking about, and moving communication flow between a number of different people. It's a lot of work, and it's a huge responsibility on this person's shoulders. So very often, this person is put at the very center of what is happening. Now, this person may be replaced by a manager, or it may be replaced by the teacher, or whoever it is. It doesn't matter necessarily. Very often, there's one dispatcher of sorts, which is moving the information flow from one place to the other. Now, I understand that many of you might be saying, oh yes, but we have a platform, or we have some sort of communication service, we have Trello, we have all these amazing things that take care of that for us. Well, that's absolutely right. These developments in technology have been designed to help make communication processes more fluid, to flow better, to work better. But then again, if you have Trello as your customer associate, then basically the same thing happens. The Trello, or the platform or the technology which you're using, is then put at the center. And if that technology isn't updated, if the communication inputs about what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and so on and so forth, aren't updated into Trello, well, communication breakdown will happen nonetheless. This results in a kind of a problem, a conundrum, if you will, for those who would like to organize processes as efficiently and as well as possible. When we put everything onto one person, one platform, or one whatever, we get on the one side a bottleneck where communication can only flow via one agent. This bottleneck may be good for a number of reasons. All communication must flow through one person, technology, service, whatever it may be, and then it's distributed from then on to everybody else. Works, right? On the other hand, if we feel that a bottleneck definitely has some negative sides, which is the case, and we say, okay, well, let's have all of our players communicate freely amongst themselves. I guarantee you what will happen after that is none other than chaos. You'll get people asking this, moving here, I thought this, I thought that, I thought here, I moved here, what time is this? Some large amount of chaos. What are we to do? Well, there's no simple one-size-fits-all solution for your communication problems or to avoid communication breakdown. This is a very specific, well, this would be in a very specific system which relies very heavily upon how or what, no, how your organization is structured, what product you are providing or selling, and also the players or the people, the agents that are involved in that. But one thing I can say for sure is that many organizations have this administrator, have this associate, customer service associate, whichever we'd like to call it. And the bottleneck begins to build on them. All the information comes through them, and so on and so forth. And that brings us to the next thing. How much can one person or one technology or one platform hold? Well, when it comes to people, there's a very interesting number here. It's called the Dunbar number. And it's listed as 148, but actually many people just round it up to 150. What is this Dunbar number? So before I go into this, I want to ask you to think about your project, your school, your organization, and think how many people are in or involved in this project, in this school at the current moment. We have a simple question. Is the number less than 150 or is the number greater than 150? Clearly put, your communication system, the way that you as the school or as the organizer develops communication flow within your school will have a direct result on your ability to scale, your ability to grow. I will make an assumption here, but I can go ahead and assume that the large majority of people out there listening today, and in general in the education sphere, have organizations or schools with a number somewhere around 150 or somewhat less than 150. Okay, everything works fine, you're happy, maybe you've got a very small operation of 20 or 30 people, including your clients, and everybody's happy. Well, of course, it's manageable at that amount. Now, the next question to ask you is, do you want to grow? Some people do, some people don't. Your desires or your goals, your business goals for your school, for your project, very heavily rely on this communication. Now, do you want to grow? If you want to get to the point where you have a lot of things happening, a lot of people, you are going to need to invest in communication. Because the Dunbar number is the point beyond which members of any social group lose the ability to function effectively in social groups. If we think about this, it's pretty common, pretty simple. You can only speak to so many people. You can only remember so many faces. You can only work with so many different things happening. You will run out of time eventually, or you'll run out of memory in your brain. And so a lot of times we hit that barrier. 150 is more or less somewhere where this barrier begins. And unless your communication systems are not built in a way to handle effectively this larger amount of people, you'll never get above 150. You might not even get anywhere close to it. This 150 number is also well documented in history. Here on the screen, you can see a Roman century, which is a group of soldiers. And as it were, they were always divided into these centuries, which had about 80 individuals or 80 soldiers in the group. And a group below that was a conturbanium with 8 individuals. Now you're saying that 80 is a little bit less than 150, but actually these centuries were very often paired together, which gave the optimal amount of people working together towards one common goal as around 150. As you see here on this slide, Anywhere from the 5, 15, 35 and up, you have stable relationships. You can manage it. But there is a point, a breaking point there. When you get above 150, or as you get closer to 150, your stress will begin to increase and communication breakdowns will happen. Go back to our bottleneck scenario. If you've got one dispatcher taking care of everything, at some point in time, they will not be able to handle it. And then you will lose money again. Relationships break down after 150, and I would even go so far as to say that they break down much earlier than 150, depending on the situation. And what is our problem with that? Education is built on close relationships between many people. Once you get above 150, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, you no longer have those close ties, those close relationships anymore. Then you begin to lose that special something that you had when you began. How can we combat this? Like I said, I'm not here today to give you a magic pill or a solution which can help just eradicate all of your communication needs. What you need to do as an organizer, as a manager, as an owner, is to analyze your own systems and dedicate more time to thinking about the communication flow. Some things that can help you. Standard operating procedures. This is critical. And this is for each teacher, each employee, each methodologist. They should all have standard operating procedures that need to be written out and given, especially for communication flow. Who to go to, when to go to, what to do in this situation. If those things are clear, all of the players will operate independently with a minimal amount of communication back and forth. Learn to say no. Why do I say this, learn to say no? One very good example in my school is this. When a student or a parent asks a teacher what time the next lesson will be, I have trained, but this was very difficult. I have trained my teachers over and over again to say simply, I don't know. Talk to the associate. Talk to the person, your personal manager. Because every time the teachers speak to the students, there always ends up being a problem. You need to learn to say no. Give answers only to things for which you're responsible for. But you also have to have the freedom to make decisions. So you need to give standard operating procedures and the freedom to make decisions. If there's a fire, the standard operating procedure is to call the fire department, sure. But if there's a fire, you also want to grab the fire extinguisher and put the fire out. Make that decision. Don't stand around. Bureaucracy is the definition of inefficiency and time waste or time loss. When you're going about creating your communication system, you want to create a communication system which makes it easier to follow the rules than to break them. So, our teacher here, as I've trained them, I said, all you have to say is, I don't know. Speak to X, Y, and Z person. In this particular instance, this works best. In other instances, it may not work best. But you can create a place where information is available, but also ensure that that information is flowing. You need to create a system which is easier to follow the rules than to break them. It's easier for my teacher to say, I don't know, than to start breaking his head about when I can have my next lessons, if I'm free on Thursdays, do I work on this day, do I not work? Many different things there. So, that's a little bit in a nutshell, a couple of the things you can do as my time is coming to a close here. For further reading, I highly recommend Malcolm Gladwell and The Tipping Point. You may read this and it will give you additional insights into this number of 150 and how communication changes and can be altered as appropriate to your organization, your project, your school. And remember, Dodo Pizza, for example, didn't become a huge chain of operations because they make the best pizza. They don't make the best pizza. They make okay pizza. But what they've done is they've facilitated their systems. They've facilitated their communication down to the T. you can have a great product, an okay product, but if your communication is on par, or if your communication is up to snuff, you will be successful. You will have a greater chance of success.